So while most companies show off a demonstration from prepared data and completed dashboards, we at altosoft thought, why not show you exactly how easy it is to build a dashboard from scratch? In just a bit, I promise you'll be blown away by how fast and easy it is to build a powerful and interactive dashboard. Here we go. One of the best features of altosoft's powerful but easy to use platform is the intuitive visual step-by-step guide located inside of our studio client. This simple guide walks you through the entire process, from data source to rich interactive dashboards. So for this demo, I'm going to build a dashboard for a sales company that needs help in analyzing its business operations selling widgets. One very clever thing about the altosoft platform is that you can use any data source. Simply name your data source, enter your credentials, and connect to that data source, and our system automatically validates and returns the data that you'll be working with. Once we've connected to the desired data source, we'll now need to create a record. A record in this case is any business fact, transaction, or event. Next, we'll select the data and the data source we're going to start with. We will now be presented a list of fields from our table. Note that since all metrics are defined by time, we inherently provide that record for you on the right. Now here's the fun part. This is where you get to click, drag, and drop. That's right, visually map all your data fields right here. Add any data source you want at this point. Another database table, a web service, or you can even select specific fields. With this simple join table mechanism, you can do it all right here. Okay, having built our records, we must now define our metrics. We have several metric types, but we'll choose a pre-processed metric in this case. Oh, and for clarity, metrics are aggregations of records, usually in the form of count, sum, or average. Our sample company only needs a sum metric at this time. By double-clicking the sum metric, I can now visually define that metric using the condition editor. This is where I can define standard or custom logic without writing any code. Simply choose your record fields, select the operations in your metric expression, and build your metric definition. Now we can define our sub-metric parameters by simply changing the results format to currency. Publish. This is where we automatically provision the metric smart. Metric Smart essentially unifies all data into a single meta scheme. After a publish, we're going to load data. This is where we select the date range of the data that will initially be loaded into the Metric Smart. Step 6. Now we're ready to design our dashboard. And after I log in here, notice in our new project our design canvas, or view if you will. This is the view onto which all things will be designed. We have a palette of chart types, but for now we'll click, drag, and drop a line chart onto our view. You'll see that most dashboard components are resizable. They also have a small menu attached to them with the 4 most used properties. Now we'll grab a grid component from our grid palette. Our metric to display is already here since we only have one. So let's move on to defining the component-specific time interval for this metric. Most components have this feature. Next, we'll need to determine additional dimensions to drill down to, and in what order. To change the order, simply click, drag, and drop them into the order you want. Here we have a palette of filters that I'll click, drag, and drop onto the view. This will allow the user to restrict data by a specific dimension for an entire dashboard, specific component, or set of components. Another cool feature is that I can actually copy and paste existing components and simply change the dimensions in which I want to view them by. Now that I pasted this new filter, I can go ahead and change the dimension. And just after about a minute and a half in Designer, we're ready for a preview. In preview mode, I can actually view and interact with the dashboard just as the end user would. Here I'll click on a data point and toggle a dimension just to verify. Just close preview mode. Now I want to add several more data sources to my dashboard. I go back to my visual guide and simply follow the steps. I'll add and name my data source just like before, but this time I'm going to connect to an Oracle database. Make sure my provider name is correct and simply enter my credentials, TNS name, username, password, and so on. Once we click the Refresh Table List button, we'll be presented with another list of fields. Select the ones you want and move on to the next data source. And we come back out to the guide again so we can add another data source. We'll go ahead and name that data source, but this time we'll connect to an Excel spreadsheet. I'll browse for it on my local machine, Once I find it, I'll open it. I'll click the Refresh Table List button and be presented with the field from which I'll work. Just like before, the next step is managing records. We'll start by joining a database from two different data sources. Now that I have selected which tables I want to join, we'll use the Advanced Editor to define the condition. The value in being able to do so visually is an exponential time saver, and oh by the way, not one line of code or scripts has been required. Because my employee fields are coming from two different data sources, I'll go ahead and define an expression that will help me be able to better align them when I get to the dashboard. Just like before, we will visually map out our data tables. Note that any field you move instantly becomes available to be used as a dimension. This data liberation empowers end users to analyze and creatively explore their data in meaningful ways. Here you'll see that you can change the record display name and ID for human consumption. Unlike ETL products and data marts, where it's hard to perform table joins and choose the data that you need with no code, you can do it here in one tool, visually and on the fly. Now let's create a derived field for multiple data sources. For our sample company, we need to define ranges of values into small, medium, and large. Doing this with the Visual Condition Editor means that we can add and modify these conditions on the fly. These will be based on quantity. From 1 to 10 orders, it will be small. From 11 to 20 orders, we'll make medium. And then lastly, from 21 and greater orders, we'll make large. Now that we set the conditions that we wanted for our order size, we can now move on to the next step. Last but not least, we need to define a record for our last data source, the Excel spreadsheet. We will name it in this case Forecast Line. After we choose which table we want, we can visually and quickly map our desired records by using the click, drag, and drop interface. Note that because it is a spreadsheet, mapping is very quick. Just like before, we have several metric types, but in this case, we'll use the pre-processed metric setting. Here we'll name our metric Total Forecast. I'll then double-click the metric to define the metric. For our sample company, we'll use the sum as our aggregation statement. We'll select the record field from our list and further assign some properties to some of the desired dimensions using our metric definition editor. And remember, since the field we drag over can become a dimension, we have lots of possibilities. For our sample company, we'll use the sum as our aggregation statement. We'll select the record field from our list and further assign some properties to some of the desired dimensions. And remember that since any field that we drag over can become a dimension, we have lots of possibilities. Just like before, we have several metric types. In this case, we're actually going to use a derived metric. A derived metric is where you have metrics that either come from two different data sources or two different fields to make one aggregation. I can now visually define that metric using the condition editor. This is where I can define standard or custom logic without writing any code. Simply choose your record fields, select the operations in your metric expression, and build your metric definition. Now I can define my submetric parameters, or rather dimensional parameters. In this case, I'm going to change the default output to %. Now that we've added our data sources, we can simply append our existing data set by republishing. After I publish, we're going to load data. This is where we select the date range of the data that will initially be loaded into the metric smart. Just like before, now we're ready to design our dashboard. And we'll go ahead and just log in here. So, just as a recap, we started with one data source, and within about 5 minutes we're able to start designing a dashboard. We then went back and added specific data from multiple data sources with one tool, with true automatic provisioning, and absolutely no code. Note altosoft's flexibility in real-world business environments. Now it's time to polish up our dashboard. First I'll grab an image component so I can display our sample company logo and brand the dashboard. And then I'll grab a text component so we can title our dashboard. I think we'll call it Operations Dashboard. Now that we're working on the main view or the home page of the dashboard, we'll need to grab a view holder and have it reference a view we built earlier and make that our default view. One of the great things about views and or even components is that they can be embedded into existing or other web applications. Anything that you can see on the screen as a dashboard can be emailed or printed into a standard report. Note that menu items can have images attached to them, can be assigned a plethora of actions, and also can be used to call views within a project. All components have their own properties and behaviors that can be made independent or dependent upon each other. The wide variety of actions that can be triggered by clicking on a menu item or other clickable dashboard component allows easily built dashboards with functionality rivaling that of custom applications. Menus can be multi-level with child or peer elements, and they also can be displayed in a variety of styles. If you don't want a menu, you can also attach the same actions to buttons and images, allowing for additional dashboard customization. In addition to using the menu to select what view to display, we could also add menu options to bring up a bookmarks page. This would allow end user to configure a dashboard the way they want it and then store that configuration, either just for themselves or share it with other dashboard users. Or we could print the current page, or view rather, or print a report, and in this case, a report being defined as a collection of dashboard pages to be printed. Or we could reset filters, or we could display external web content, or we could update data in the metric smart, and many more options. Here we add another filter, this one to filter what employees we are including in our charts and grids. Filters have a large number of choices as to their appearance and functionality. Here we set this filter to display all the options in a list on the side of the screen rather than before, where we use the drop-down style that saves space only by showing the options list when we needed to see it. Now here in preview mode, you'll get to see how the end user will experience this dashboard. Boom, there you have it. From A to Z, from data source to final product, you've now built a dashboard in less than 15 minutes. altosoft is a true single end-to-end platform that provides you the power of enterprise class while enabling you true ease of use. So instead of you watching me play in this demo, why don't you try it for yourself? Click the live demo button just above.